Welcome back to The Line. Former New Mexico Congressman Steve Pearce faces a new political battle this weekend when Republican insiders will pick a new state party chairman. His opponent is Albuquerque businessman John Rockwell, who ran for the chairmanship twice before, you might remember, and lost, you might remember as well. Now, former Speaker of the House Don Tripp this week publicly endorsed Mr. Rockwell. And Dan, kind of perilous times for the party when you think about the context of the party losing all statewide seats and 8 seats in the House. I mean, just a real mess. Is this the normal cycle of how state parties operate? You know, you lose, it's just a low swoop, you rebuild, you come back up. Or is this a signal of something way bigger going on here?
Oh, I think it's way bigger going on here with the Republican Party. I mean, as a member of the Republican Party, I lost an election for House. When I lost my election, you disappear. You don't go running around. We have a guy who took one of the worst lickings that anybody's taken in a statewide race, and within a month of losing the race, he's now the answer for state party chair. Or the other opportunity is, let's elect another old rich white guy.
Right.
I mean, we look around the state of New Mexico. I hate to be the guy screaming from the mountains, but as a Republican of the Republican Party, if we think the way to ingratiate ourselves with the citizens of this state is to keep electing rich white guys that are over 55 years old, well, I think we're going to keep doing what we're doing. And, there seems to be no movement for inclusion, trying to bring people in. As we were saying off camera, I think the big one is going to be the Libertarian Party, because conservatives really don't want to be independent because they don't want to not have a voice, and we tend to have a desire to have a title with us as conservatives.
Fair enough.
I'm conservative, so I think this is a big jump for the Libertarian Party. I think if they get their act together, they could do some stuff. I appreciate Speaker Tripp, and I think in my opinion, what Speaker Tripp, it's not the endorsement that speaks loudly, it's the lack of the endorsement to me that speaks loudly. I think the shenanigans that came out about them trying to change the date and telling people they got to register at these crazy times. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know why. I mean, I'll use a sports analogy. When you get shellacked, I doubt that the Atlanta Falcons, after losing to your New England Patriots, the biggest come-from-behind win. I doubt when they returned Monday morning, they gathered as a team and said, let's have a postmortem right now. Let's talk about what just happened. You kind of want to step back, let the dust settle a little bit. And the last thing I would say is if the people of the Republican Party think the best thing to do to advance conservative values is to elect the loser of the governor's race to keep the governor in check, you're going to give Governor Lujan Grisham and her folks the unabashed ability to dismiss the party by saying this is nothing but sour grapes. So, I think at the end of the day, the Republican Party needs to take pause. I think they need to slow their roll a little bit. I think they need to smell the burning tea leaves and go, we need some changes.
Is that the answer, Murray, just to slow down a little bit here, or is this a systemic thing that just really needs some fast action to solve?
Well, I've seen since the late 90s, and when I moved back to New Mexico in 2005, the Republican Party has never been cohesive or united. There have always been factions. After Governor Martinez was elected in 2008, some of the names changed. But then new fights began. And so essentially what you have right now is you have the Martinez machine backing John Rockwell, and then you have Steve Pearce, which could be defined as the rest of the state.
Gotcha.
And we already know how the Martinez faction feels about the state party, given the fact that they're sitting on almost $6 million in PAC money, and the state Republican Party is out of cash.
Wow.
And no money was spent in this general election cycle. Some money was spent in the primary supporting one candidate who also lost, Monty Newman. So no one is coming from a position of victory. Martinez did not win any seats. Pearce did not win any seats. What has to happen is there's got to be a focus on getting Republicans elected. And I think that's the crucial mistake that the Martinez faction has made, is not focusing on getting more Republicans elected, or even building a coalition with those who are. 2014, we have Nate Gentry work like a dog, got a majority in the House. And we couldn't get a budget passed because the governor would not tell her caucus what she wanted. I mean, you're spending a month or 2 months, I don't remember which session, with a 36-day session, in the same building together. And you can't have that conversation. So we have a broken system with a lot of money. We have an unhappy rest of the state, who I think is kind of banding behind Pearce, who have no direction because, to use Dan's term, we were shellacked. So I think this seems pretty fast, but whoever wins has got to stop these fights and has got to reach across the aisle. And it's regional.
That's right.
Because a lot of Republicans are not in Albuquerque.
That's right.
And there's a perception that Bernalillo County Republican Party thinks that they are better and different and rarefied, and there's some Bernalillo County Republicans who absolutely agree.
Whoever wins needs
So-
to fire everybody and hire young people.
Wow.
Yes.
That don't have a side, that don't have a fight. Just hire them, turn it over the keys over. If it was me and I got elected, I'd go find 50 young people and say, "Here you go.
Right.
Ask me if you got a question."
Interesting
You guys start
opportunity for
building.
the college Republicans and folks of that generation.
And I see
Interesting
I
point.
see some really interesting voices
Yeah.
coming up on the conservative side. I can think of three, two in Albuquerque, one down south, who are and they are in very different roles. One's almost a libertarian. One's a strong fiscal conservative, one's a very strong social conservative. And I think these three people under 30 are, to Dan's point, most important.
Good deal. We have about 3 minutes left. I'm going to split between these other guys here. Interesting in Mr. Pierce's letter, Adrian, that I think he's making the point that I have a machine built, and therefore the
Machine lost.
Right.
Got
Look,
shellacked.
the bottom line is it doesn't matter who gets elected this weekend, right? The Republican Party is going to double down on a losing strategy. Both Rockwell and Pierce represent ideologies that don't match, clearly the election showed, that don't match the ideology of the rest of the state. They're both too extreme for New Mexico. They're a threat to anybody who's a hardworking New Mexican, LGBTQ, an immigrant, women, in communities of color. You know, it's to expand on your analogy. You know, when a team keeps losing, you get rid of the coach. You don't re-elect them to a new. You don't keep them, right? And this is, you know, I think this is going to be a generational deficiency for the Republican Party if they elect either of these people.
Interesting point there.
It seems to me that this is what we're also seeing on the national level, though. You know, we have a Senate leadership that's like, well, okay, we didn't really, we didn't really expect that this was going to be a great election. You've got the Republicans in D.C. essentially like, well, you know, Trump. And it seems like that's the same thing here. Well, you know, we're not going to do too much introspection. Let's keep going on with what we've been doing in the past. And it seems to me that at least nationally, when you say, well, this is the guy who we got, it can be quite difficult to change. In New Mexico, we're not seeing yet the bold new leader who could take the place of Pierce or Rockwell here. And so maybe this is just like it seems on the national level, kind of a hunkering down period.
That's right. Is
Let's
it a
get through
point
it.
that the rank and file is not being heard? There's no updraft here. It all seems
Well,
to be
I think
driven
the
from the
problem
top.
is the parties are pretty much irrelevant nowadays. The way
Okay.
Citizens United, the way things are done, it's about. I mean, you know, really, it's not about ideology of the party chairman. It's about being able to make the trains run on time. It's about being able to raise money. It's about being able to gather people to follow a vision, not necessarily the vision of that we agree. And these guys are right. I hate to agree with you on some of this, but it's, you know, we've got a myopic view as Republicans. You're either all with me or you're against me.
Right.
And until we start realizing that we got to give on some issues, you know, if I don't agree with you on these 2 issues but agree with you on these 4 issues, we should be working together. And I think the only way you're going to do that is by embracing younger folks and bringing them in that have a different view, and the other folks, the 50 and older crowd, I can say that because I'm not there yet. So the 50 and older crowd needs to sit back, slow their roll, and say, we had our time, it didn't work well, it's your time.
Good point there. We'll have to end that there. When we come back to the table, debating the Archdiocese of Santa Fe's decision to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection.